Good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us in this side event on the occasion of the 65th session of the Commission on Status of Women. A special welcome to our speakers and attendees in Asia who are joining us rather late at night. I also would like to acknowledge and express my sincere appreciation to our co-hosts, India, Japan, Sweden, and Tanzania, and the Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, ESCOWA. On behalf of the co-sponsors, of course, I would like to say how pleased we are to have formidable women and men parliamentarians from around the world, and UN officials as well, committed to strengthening women's rights and addressing barriers to women's political participation as part of our panel today. Before proceeding and introducing our, of course, keynote speaker, Ambassador Melanie Verveer, let me give the floor to my fellow colleagues and co-hosts. And let me begin by giving the floor to Ambassador Tiro, the permanent representative of India to the United Nations. Tiro, please, that you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Alia. I'm delighted to participate and be associated with this high-level event on this important and topical theme. I felicitate the dynamism of Ambassador Alia and the state of Qatar for taking this initiative. Women have always been central to Indian political life and inspired us in our civilizational journey. Even during our struggle for independence, women were right at the forefront. They have shouldered critical political responsibilities in India's journey as an independent nation and held posts of president, prime minister, speakers of parliament, judges, and chief ministers of various states of India. India had a woman prime minister long before most other countries had one. Today, we will hear from one of our young and dynamic member of parliament, Ms. Poonam Mahajan. I thank her for her presence. India now has more than 1.3 million elected women at the grassroots level who take leadership role in decision making. Our Prime Minister has called for moving from women's development to women-led development. Let us not forget that women-led development is also a more compassionate one. Indian women have also had a deep impact on the United Nations. For example, the first woman president of the General Assembly was Mrs. Vijayalakshmi Pandit. Another Indian, Dr. Hansa Mehta, left an indelible mark on the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There is no doubt that when we build back better from the pandemic, we need an inclusive political agenda with gender equality as the fulcrum to achieve the sustainable development goals. Thank you very much, Ambassador Alia.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Tiro. Thank you very much for your kind words. Let me now move forward and give the floor to Ambassador Kimihiro, the permanent representative of Japan. Ambassador, you have.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Alia, Excellencies, and distinguished speakers and guests. It's really a pleasure to be with you today. I am particularly delighted with the presence of Ms. Rui Matsukawa, Parliamentary Vice Minister of Defense and member of the House of Councillors of Japan today. Well, I worked with her when she was still in the Foreign Service, and I remember, among other things, that she is the one who launched the World Assembly for Women in 2014 as the director of the Gender Mainstreaming Division in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She excelled as a diplomat, and even more impressive is her ascent in politics and her efforts in breaking glass ceilings in Japan. I am so thrilled with this reunion. Well, now, enhancing women's political participation, about which we hear today, holds key to an equal opportunity to enjoy all the rights and fully developing human potential. This is why gender mainstreaming is an embodiment of human security. And this event is thus timely, not only in heralding the opening of the Commission on the Status of Women, but also as we build back better in the wake of the human security crisis of COVID-19. I have so much to look forward to today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Kimihiro. Let me move forward and give the floor to Ambassador Anna Karen, the permanent representative of Sweden. Anna, please, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, and I'm very pleased and proud to be here today as representative of the world's first feminist government. And let me thank and congratulate you, Alia, Ambassador Alia, for arranging this event, this very important event. Let me also thank co-sponsors and speakers, and I'm really excited to listen to today's discussion. Let me raise three quick points. I mean, first, gender equality is a fundamental objective of Sweden's foreign policy, and ensuring the full enjoyment of human rights by all women and girls is both an obligation to all of us within the international framework, but it's also a necessity for peace, security, economic development, and for achieving the sustainable development goals. Secondly, the feminist foreign policy aims to strengthen women's and girls' rights, representation, and resources. And third, we need to break down the structured barriers to women's political participation and strengthen their ability to influence. In Sweden today, 57% of ministers in the government are women, and nearly 50% of the members of parliament are women. But this development took decades to achieve and was mainly possible through the very hard work of women's organizations and women members in political parties. I'm very happy and proud to have member of Parliament Annika Strandhäll in the panel, and as a member of Parliament, but also as a former member of a feminist government, I know that she is exactly the right person to speak to the subject that will be discussed during this meeting today. So thank you so much, Ambassador Alia, and to the rest of the participants. Thank you.
Many thanks, dear Ambassador Anna Karen. Let me move forward and give the floor to Ambassador Kennedy, the permanent representative of Tanzania. Kennedy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Let me begin also by thanking you, Ambassador Alia, and the state of Qatar for really leading the process towards the organizing this event. Equally, I want to thank my fellow co-sponsors that have put effort in making this event a reality. Permanent representative of India, Japan, and Sweden. Excellencies, colleagues, the United Republic of Tanzania is extremely pleased to join hands with colleagues in co-sponsoring this important event, again on an important topic, namely promotion of women's rights in all spheres of public life, and especially in political participation within the context of sustainable development goals. The current government of Tanzania, under His Excellency Dr. John Pombe Joseph Magufuli, continues to reform its constitutional, legislative, and administrative orders, as well as putting in place necessary women empowerment funds and programs. And we have achieved tremendous progress, and we believe that there are more yet to come, and we are happy to share with you some of the gain lessons and also eager to learn from you. It is on this note that I'm extremely happy and proud that one of the influential, Honorable Dr. Tulia Ackson, the Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of Tanzania, is among the high-level panelists in our today's event. Let me again conclude these remarks by recording the commitment of the United Republic of Tanzania in promoting gender equality and empowerment of women, and I look forward to a fruitful session today. I thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Kennedy. And again, I would like to thank my fellow colleagues, ambassadors, and co-hosts of this important and timely side event. We need now to set the tone for our discussion this morning, and no one can do this better than Ambassador Melanie Verveer, the Executive Director of the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security, who do not need an introduction. Ambassador Verveer, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Alia, and I would wish to begin by expressing my gratitude to you for your leadership in holding this side event on the topic of women's political participation, and to applaud your government for the progress it is making in this arena. Qatar was the first Gulf country to allow women the right to vote and stand for office, and it is only appropriate that you bring us together today. We recently marked the 25th anniversary of the UN Fourth World Conference on Women that took place in Beijing. It adopted a platform for action by consensus, a blueprint to advance women's rights as human rights. And one of the critical areas was addressing the inequality between men and women in the sharing of power and decision-making at all levels. As the platform noted, without the active participation of women and the incorporation of women's perspective at all levels of decision-making, the goals of equality, development, and peace cannot be achieved. Today, this is encompassed in the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly goal number 5, which focuses on gender equality and women's empowerment. It recognizes that women continue to be underrepresented at all levels of political leadership. The world also continues with the dealing with the pandemic that has taken such a disproportionate toll on women and exposed existing deep inequalities. We will not be able to build back better unless women are included in COVID-19 response planning and decision-making, fully integrated in the pandemic recovery leadership roles. And we have already seen how women heads of state and government, few as their numbers still are, have played an outsized role leading their governments in among the most effective pandemic response efforts. Moreover, the Security Council, in adopting Resolution 1325, recognized the important role that women play in peace negotiations, peace building, and conflict resolution. Yet, as we know, women are still too often marginalized in all aspects of peace and security decision-making. This UN framework, from Beijing to the SDGs, from 1325 to the COVID response, should act as a guidepost for today's discussion. Women comprise half the population, yet still hold too few positions in national governments. They are still significantly outnumbered in parliaments or key decision-making bodies at all levels, both elective and appointive, as well as in judiciaries, and they are missing from the negotiating tables where conflicts are resolved. We know that when women are discriminated against in the political arena, their experiences, their perspectives, and contributions are shut out of political decisions, the very decisions that affect them and their families, and they have no voice in those decisions. Not only are they shortchanged, but the prospects to address and raise important issues are also shortchanged, to the detriment of all of society. While there has been great progress, and we should take heart over the progress that has been made, women continue to face significant challenges. A history of marginalization, structural impediments, harmful stereotypes, and negative attitudes have not disappeared entirely. Political structures remain male-dominated, and political parties that in many places act as the gatekeepers to women's political participation. They too often function in a manner that is more exclusionary than participatory, and they continue to impose barriers to women's political progress. We must all work to identify and remedy those discriminatory laws and policies in order to strengthen women's political participation. And we must find ways to highlight and share best practices, to build the capacity of women candidates, to provide training and networks, as well as to engage in efforts for more responsive and inclusive governance. The adoption of quotas has made a difference in opening the doors in many places, but there is still much that remains to be done. Before I conclude, I would like to personally recognize Rola Dashti, who will be speaking shortly. When I first met her many years ago, she, along with other women in Kuwait, were struggling for the right to vote and stand for office. And they adopted as their slogan, the future of Kuwait. This issue is the future of every country. Rola was one of the first women elected to parliament over a decade ago. And today, of course, she leads ESQA. And I also want to mention another woman, if I may, who will also be speaking. Rui Matsukawa, a young woman who decided to take the risks and run for office. I'll never forget when she called me to say she was struggling with her decision. It wasn't easy, but thanks to women like her, more young women are running for political office and making a difference. And today in this wonderful session, we encourage all of them. Women's political participation is not a zero-sum game. The full participation of men and women in political decision-making benefits all of society. It benefits men and women. It benefits boys and girls. Today's session is a call to action to ensure that women have every opportunity to take their rightful place in the political and public life of their societies and to contribute to enhancing the SDGs and to build back better. Thank you so much, Ambassador Alia.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Verveer, and thank you so much for framing the issues so perfectly and give us a lot for food for thought today to elaborate on and discuss further on this panel. Thank you again. It gives me great pleasure, of course, now to introduce the high-level panel moderator, Dr. Hind al-Muftah. Dr. Hind is, of course, one of the first Qatari women to have been appointed along with 3 other honorable ladies as members of the Qatari Shura Council. Dr. Hind is a prominent academic from the state of Qatar who has served in many academic and administrative positions, both in Qatar University and the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Dr. Hind, you have the floor, and I look forward to the discussion that you will moderate today. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sheikh Alia. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's my really great pleasure and a great honor to open and moderate this very high-level panel. Thank you for joining us from all around the world, and hopefully you will enjoy this discussion, which I believe very strongly, some of it already been summarized by the very distinguished speakers. My name, as Sheikh Alia, she mentioned, my name is Hind Abdurrahman al-Muftah, and I'm an academic, a human rights advocate and legislator from Qatar. Excellencies, this event is being held in a time of a great change, more clearly than ever. We see more women on the front line, specifically in the responses to the COVID-19 pandemic, as heads of the state's government ministries, health and care workers, and even community leaders in mobilizing change. Across the globe, women are taking action to build back better. More women than ever are being very active players and even elected, not only in parliaments, but also in general ministries and governments. Internationally, many governments, NGOs, legislators calls for active and very efficient women's political participation and empowerment and everywhere. And this is why women issues are placed as a priority in relation to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And just as Her Excellency Ambassador Marina stressed and stated very, very briefly, without achieving goal 5.5, any issues related to the inequality and equity of women's empowerment and political participation will not be active in reality. That's why it is very significant and important to enhance the political participation of women in decision-making and policy making position. I'm so proud to note that Qatar's response to the SDGs has been led by a very distinguished woman, Her Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser, and followed today by her daughter, a very promising leader, Sheikha Hind bint Hamad, And within also the recent pandemic, it was led with an extraordinary woman, Dr. Hanan Al-Kuwari, the Minister of Public Health. After 3 decades of Qatar, very happy with a very strategic vision, investment in the Qatar women's education and capacity building and empowerment, we are very proud to state that today Qatari women represent 70% of higher education graduates, specifically in science, technology, laws, management, 58.5% as a labor market with very good representation in diplomatic, interior and external, and even justice positions, and 30% in leadership positions, 15% as in the private sector as entrepreneurs, owing nearly $25 billion. In October 2021, Qatar will witness a very unique event that will have future evidence, not only on the country, but also on the entire region, the election of Qatar's first Shura Council with unprecedented legislative and oversight powers. It will also be a major milestone for women to participate and serve in the country in both sides as voters and or taking office. We are also building the human capital foundations that allows women to increase representation in all different aspects of economic and political lives. For instance, Hamad bin Khalifa University, in addition to other higher education institutions in Qatar, are offering training courses for political empowerment, discussions and advisory sessions by their professors and Arab women who have gone through this same political experiences. I'm very optimistic. And let me tell you that the previous elections, such as the one for the Central Municipal Council took over in 1999 in Qatar, female voters turned up in a greater numbers than men at many constituents of our capital, Doha. Most importantly, Qatari women was elected for 3 times since 1999, and today we have 2 women represented in the Municipal Council. There is a wide belief that women can overcome any challenges, as being stressed by the excellencies in their remarks in the opening of this panel. Women can do much better, and if they were given equal opportunity. Let me also highlight that since 2017, the Shura Council has 4 women, and I'm proud to be one of them, along with Her Excellency Rima Mansouri, who will be joining also us in this panel. Today's events provides an opportunity to learn from each other, to learn how countries are addressing gender inequality regarding women's political participation, also to share lessons on how to promote women in leadership and decision-making positions. Also, it is a very excellent opportunity to share the best practices on the sort of training programs that help women build their capacities and even voters and civic education and sensitization. We have an extraordinary speakers, all-star panel here, composed of women parliamentarians, United Nations officials, and the International Parliamentarian Union. I'm going to start off with our very distinguished guest, as being also mentioned by her ambassador Melina, Rola Dashti. As one of my Kuwaiti colleagues, she was the Sabor and Moon women of Kuwaiti females that without their efforts, they would not be able to vote. Rola Dashti, she's an executive secretary for Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, which is ESCWA, and she's a long-time champion of women's rights and gender equality. She was a member of the Supreme Planning Council, and she was the Minister of the Planning Affairs in Kuwait. And she is also one of the very well-known women in Kuwait in particular and in the GCC for playing a very pivotal role in advocating for the decree to allow Kuwaiti women to vote and to run parliamentarian elections. And in May 2009, she, with other 3 women, became the first woman to be elected to Kuwait parliament. So, Rola, my first question will be is that as the chair of the ESCWA, could you please let us know what is the ESCWA doing to support countries in the region to strengthen their political participation in political life at both national and subnational levels, and how this capacity can be strengthened specifically in seeking public office? what would you also say are the current barriers or challenges that really women face in reaching such active participation?
Thank you. Thank you, Hind. Thank you for the nice introduction. Don't waste your time. Focus on your work and career. Things do not change. And if they do, it takes years to materialize. This is what I was told 30 years ago during my civic engagement in granting Kuwaiti women their political rights. Yes, things have changed after 15 years. Kuwaiti women were granted their political rights, and after 4 years, 4 women were elected to parliament, and I was privileged to be one of them. Things do change, but change requires perseverance, faith in our capabilities, and the value of our involvement in achieving inclusive development and a dignified life for all. Most importantly, change requires the power to confront the psychological terrorism we endure while struggling for political participation. Today, the region made some advances, and women's political participation in the region has increased, reaching about 17%. Yet, it stands below the global average of 24%, and their presence in the judiciary system and leadership positions in governments is still way less. I hope to see my friend Hind to be part of the upcoming elected Shura Council. Let me highlight 3 main challenges Arab women encounter when they deal with political participation. First, there is a societal disagreement on their role in public life, especially when it comes to be part of the upper echelon in the decision making. Second, Arab governments invest in building women capabilities, but have limited creating opportunity for them for political participation and decision making. Third, in general, women's weak investment in politics, absence from political networking, and irregular engagement in public issues, whether political, economic, or social. What ESCWA is doing to address these challenges? We're doing a lot, but let me highlight 3 key actions. First, we support women in running for elected political office by enhancing their political skills, campaigning their campaigning capabilities, and building recognition for their achievements in the public arena to bridge the head start advantage men have over them in politics. Second, we provide training, sharing best practices, and facilitating the exchange of political knowledge among women in the region. In addition, we empower women in conflict-affected countries in building their mediation capabilities in peace negotiation and reconstruction efforts. Third, we advocate for gender equality and the effective implementation of the quota systems where they exist, and for quota adoption in other countries by facilitating national discussions on the best context-specific quota options. These are some of the issues that we are adapting into it. And under COVID, achieving the 2030 agenda and gender equality remains our roadmap to inclusive and sustainable development, as the pandemic, has disproportionately disrupted women's lives in the region, leading to an increase in marital violence, unpaid care work, and employment instabilities. We supported governments in expanding social protection coverage to ensure vulnerable women, including those in the formal sectors, have access to social protection systems. We also upheld countries in ensuring that COVID-19 recovery incorporates opportunities for women and enhances their potential to bridge gender divide. We recommended that governments ensure that fiscal stimulus packages support women's SMEs, protect women from falling into poverty, and provide them with affordable, quality, and equitable care services. To end, I'm confident that change will happen, and that with our collective commitments, we will enable women to be on equal footing in power sharing and decision making, and that no woman will be left behind. Thank you, Hind.
Thank you, Rola. That was very promising. So keep the change and keep the leading the change itself, which sounds very good. Okay.
Thank you.
I think we will follow you in your line, and we will be just, struggling to change. Now, our next speaker is the Honorable Patricia Tonnesy, Permanent Observer of the Interparliamentary Union of the United Nations. Patricia represents the IPU, the oldest multilateral political organization in the world, and she's a former Canadian MP. Patricia also was the chair of Women Caucus and attended the Beijing meeting in Women 1995. My question to Patricia was such very rich knowledge and experience in the international aspect. The IPU, United Nations Women Map, a unique tool that captures women participation in the executive government and parliament, and the parliaments, had just released, and it shows that internationally, only 25.5% are in the parliaments. Are you seeing any progress in women political participation, and what sort of conclusion are being drawn? Can you unmute, Patricia? Patricia, sorry, can you unmute? Yeah, yes, please.
Thank you. Funny, that wasn't an expression in 2019. Can you unmute? Thank you very much. And thank you to Ambassador Altani and her team for putting this together. This really is a very important conversation that is taking place. As you mentioned, gender equality and decision-making is a very important aspect, a key priority of the IPU. And we believe that parliaments cannot be truly democratic unless they are representative. We know that women in power is good for governance, for sustainable development, for climate justice, and for peace. And if we want to build back better, we need women's voices and leadership more than ever. And as you mentioned, we have been monitoring these numbers for decades now, and the map that we released last week is an eye-opener from that perspective. The good news, as you mentioned, is that more women are in the driver's seat. We have 59 women speakers. We have 22 countries where women are elected heads of state or government. That's up 2 from the year before. And we have seen those record numbers of women MPs and ministers at 25.5% and 21.9%. But the bad news, as I think, is that progress has been too slow. At this pace, it will take another half-century to reach gender parity in parliament and in government. So I say the first order is to accelerate progress. I think your mic is open, actually. Ms. Al-Mufta, I think your microphone is open. I'm getting a little feedback. We know that gender parity is possible where there's political will to level the playing field between men and women. And in every region, we are seeing that there are parliaments and governments with at least 40% women. Most of these countries have put in place strong, well-designed gender quota laws. Since the 1990s, these quotas have become ever more ambitious, leaning toward gender parity and accelerating the process of, or progress rather, on representation and challenging the belief that politics is not a place for women. In 2020, in countries where there were gender quotas applied, women won 27.4% of the seats in the single or lower houses of parliament, while countries with no quotas elected only 15.6% women. So that's an important thing, have those quotas. Secondly, for progress to be achieved and for women to fully participate in decision-making, we need a gender-responsive political space free from sexism, harassment, and violence. Strong laws and policies of zero tolerance. And we need role models like many of the women who are here on this call today, and starting with those political leaders. Gender parity in decision-making can only be achieved if we promote gender equality across the board. So that's the third thing. This is an immense task. Discrimination in laws still affect about 2.5 billion women and children. And in the current crisis, we are losing ground. The hard-won gains since 1995, the hard-won gains on women's rights and gender equality that also affect women's participation. So we need recovery plans and budgets that are designed to mitigate existing gender inequalities. Today, more than ever, we need to ensure that we have equal pay, equal property rights, affordable childcare, protection from gender violence, and all of that requires vigilant and gender responsiveness when we're adopting laws, policies, and budgets. And clearly this is a space for parliaments. So the first step is to ensure gender-sensitive parliaments, making sure they have the legal mandate and they are equipped and willing to mainstream gender equality at all levels by men and women, by staff and members of parliament. And that these parliaments are working closely with government and civil society, especially women's groups and feminist groups. And I think I may be skipping ahead, but to a second question about the post-COVID recovery. Okay, so clearly to recover effectively, we are going to need a world with gender-sensitive parliaments and ensure that men and women participate equally in the COVID task force or the ad hoc committees that governments established, and that these committees have a gender mandate, that the witnesses who come before them include women professionals, and that we make sure that parliaments are able to request from governments gender disaggregated data and gender responsive budgets, and that the capacity to analyze that data and propose amendments into the draft bills. And we need to give full support to those women's parliamentary caucuses or gender committees and to create them where they don't already exist. We need to ensure that there are no unintended discrimination against women in the workforce, whether they are parliamentarians or staff, keeping in mind that the additional care burden has been mostly on women that in the home where they're providing childcare and working full-time and doing homeschooling and everything else. And we need to make sure that we address the gender gap in technology and digital literacy between men and women.
Thank you. That was so brief, but to the point. And listening to what has been said, taking into consideration that many legislation been taken place regarding women's empowerment, women's protection, equal pay, and so on, been taken since a while, but till today we are still struggling to reach the proper equal opportunities for both. And we'll come back to that point again. I'm very sure that most of the audience will share many questions in this aspect. Now moving to Qatar, to my colleague Reem Al-Mansouri, who is being also a member in the Shura Council. She's an assistant under secretary for digital society development and also a member, as I said, of the Shura Council. Reem also leading a digital transformation towards a smart future in Qatar. So Reem, being one of the 4 ladies that have been appointed by His Highness the Emir to be a members, the first female to access or to enter the Shura Council for the first time in Qatari women histories. And taking into consideration the Qatari women remarkable achievements and records in educational attainment, leadership and political empowerment, and so on. So as one of those women in the current Shura Council, how do you see the role of Qatari women will play in the forthcoming election? And what sort of support and encouragement is being given to her? Yes, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hind. I would like to start by welcoming honorable guest, Honorable Mr. Dorothy Pacheco, President of the Interparliamentary Union, IBU, Honorable Ambassador Alia bint Ahmed Al Thani, Permanent Representative of the State of Qatar to the United Nations, Honorable Rula Deshti, Executive Director of the Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, ISQA, and all honorable guests. It's my pleasure to address you in this meeting held in the 65th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, which is the primary intergovernmental body exclusively dedicated to promoting gender equality and empowering women. Qatar has really step very positive and solid steps toward women support and women rights. Upon displaying directives of His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir of the State of Qatar, we in the State of Qatar are working side by side with men. We all work to enhance the status of women, to empower and support them to attain full equality and true partnership in the development of the country. We as well strive hard to achieve all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. It's important to note that the role of women is essential in realizing these goals, especially those related to equality and the empowerment of women. You are well aware of the decision taken by His Highness, the Emir of the State of Qatar, on holding the first direct legislative election in the State of Qatar for electing members of the Shura Council in the next October 2021. The sublime decision is considered an important step in the context of strengthening democracy in the State of Qatar. There is no doubt that the role of Qatari women will be essential in the success of this democratic process, as Qatari women will fulfill their duty to register on the voters list and their duty as well as to nominate and participate in the vote. These scheduled elections will take place next October, are considered the first free and direct election to choose 2/3 of the members of the Shura Council, which has been established since 1972. This is not the first experience of direct general elections in the State of Qatar, as it was preceded by the election of the Central Municipal Council that begins in 1999 and was repeated 6 times. So far, Qatari women were effective in this election, and they did win 5 following 5 rounds of these elections out of the 6. It's also worth noting that the success of Qatari women in assuming many high positions at the national and international levels and their superiority in performance of their duties. Qatari women have assumed that the position of ministers, ambassadors, executive director general, and permanent delegate of the State of Qatar in the United Nations. Here, it is necessary to emphasize the important and prominent role played by Her Highness Sheikh Hamouza bint Nasser, consort of His Highness the Father Emir, and her remarkable efforts at the national and regional and international levels. Her sponsorship of all events address women issues and her advancement of education inside and outside the State of Qatar. Qatari law entitled both men and women equal rights and ask them for equal duties. I am certain that Qatari women will rise up and respond positively to the call of a duty and contribute to the success of upcoming general election. This is especially based on their experience as members in the current Shura Council, whereby they have proved to everyone the competence and efficiency of Qatari women in carrying out all duties as member of the parliament, especially in the legislative and oversight duties. They as well contribute to parliamentary diplomacy in their capacity as member of the Shura Council. Women have also proved their success in confronting all tasks assigned to them, thanks to the great support they receive from all quarters in the country. We in the State of Qatar are heading, by the will of Allah, to hold a democratic festival in which women will contribute in a great deal, and they are really going to head for success. We hope that women and civil society organizations join hands in mobilizing balanced participation of women, whether during nomination or during election campaign. This will eventually lead to election of the largest number of female candidates for the membership of the Shura Council. In order to participate in the revival and the development and progress of our country under the excellent conditions that the wise leadership of our country has provided to them. In light of these background and the bright really Qatari women in public affairs, the Shura Council election to be held next October will represent the milestone and strong starting point of complementing women political and legislative role alongside of her brother, the Qatari male. It will be the first democratic experiment for direct free election to elect members of the Shura Council. New Council shall have a basic role in legislation and oversight. Qatari women will have in all activities of the Shura Council, according to the Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir of the State of Qatar, who will continue to support Qatari women and encourage them to engage in political work by appointing 4 members to the current Shura Council. Have the owner already we played a very important role, and we did all our best participation working with Shura Council, whether inside or outside the country. And thanks God, I believe that we succeed in organization and fora. I wish for our meeting a success and to set all the initiative and decision to support women enhance their status and their pioneering role. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Reem. I can't say more. We are, both of us are experiencing the same experience for the first time in Qatari women history. So thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Dr. Tulia Ackson, Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Tanzania. She's also a senior lecturer at the School of Law. Dr. Tulia, are you with us? Yes, Dr. Tulia. So Dr. Tulia, Tanzania has made a very great strides in ensuring that women's voices are heard in electoral and decision-making processes. Women currently in Tanzania occupy 37% of the seats of the national parliament. They also work effectively across party members and decision-making positions. How did Tanzania manage to increase women participation in the political leadership? And do you think there are still any kind of barriers or challenges that Tanzanian women are facing so that it's going to be a good opportunity to overcome and increase their participation?
Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in this meeting. I recognize the presence of all of you, dignitaries and guests of honor. I'm sorry I signed in late because I was informed the time has changed. So, but I recognize the presence of all of you. And I'll go straight to the question that has been asked. I've been asked how, so I would say there are a number of issues that influenced our country to reach where we have reached right now. One of them is the associated changes that happened in the entire world, you know, women's rights, and then the discussions as they go on around the world. Tanzania is also part of that, so that is also considered. But also our international obligations, because we have signed a number of international conventions that require us to make some changes to our laws and also our constitution. Like we are all aware of the Beijing Platform for Action that also influenced part of it. And then you have the Convention on Elimination and of all forms of discrimination against women. So the provisions of these convention also influenced how our country has changed to be where it is right now. also other conventions like the Convention on Political and Civil Rights, and Tanzania is part to the international community through those conventions. So ideally what the country did in the 1990s decided to take extra effort to ensure that we have a good representation of women in the parliament. So our constitution was changed and has been changed several times to accommodate the number that you're mentioning now. So in 1995, changes were made which accommodated 15% of women. So out of the members of parliament that we had then, 15% had to be women, and that was enshrined in the constitution. I'll explain a little bit later how you get the 15%. And then in 2000, the threshold was added, so it was now 20%. So 2005, again, the constitution was changed to have the 30%. So that's why right now, if you say Tanzania has 37%, you're right, because the constitution gives a threshold of a minimum of 30% of the house must be female. Now, the total number of members of parliament is 393. And so out of 393, a minimum of 30% must be women. Now, how we get these women, the 30%? When we have general elections, we are a multi-party democracy. So different political parties get a chance to participate in those elections. And so depending on the number of votes that a particular party gets, not the presidential votes, but the members of parliament. So in a very likely event is where you have the majority in the members of parliament, the constituents ones that are directly elected. You will also have a higher number or a higher share out of the 30%. So the 30% gets divided amongst the parties that participated in the general election, provided a party had a minimum of 5% of the total votes of 393 members of parliament. Now, out of the 393 members of parliament, we have got 264 constituencies. So now that I'm a member of parliament, much as I'm female, I don't come from the 30%. I come from the extra 7%, because I come from a group that is directly elected from the constituencies. So the political parties get such numbers and then they make the 30%. So back to your question, you asked me how. I would say with all the changes that were happening in the world or are still happening in the world, as we talk about women's rights, doing justice to the whole world, then you can't leave women behind. You can't leave people with disabilities behind. Then there are a number of changes that have taken place in our constitution. But also we have got laws in place. Now, those are numerous. I can't probably be able to mention all of them right now. But just by way of example, because our societies have evolved over time. There was time when they would look at a woman like somebody who should just stay at home, wait to be, to get married and then make a family. But since that changes, the laws also change. Now, the presence of women in the parliament in these numbers definitely has a huge influence, because now they have a chance to demand more rights. They have a chance to also air their views. Like when we talk about gender-based violence, there are a number of laws that have been changed because the women were able to raise their voices. Like we have a specific law, and maybe I should mention this one because of its specialty. We have the Sexual Offences Special Provisions Act. Now, this law was enacted to deal with a number of challenges that would happen in a women's world. People will ask if somebody says they were raped. They would want to know the age of this person. they would want to know whether actually, you know, something like that happened, how it happened. And because such cases were very difficult to report, but also to convict the perpetrators, this law was put into place to give more respect and dignity to women. So now there are a number of issues that are addressed there, which are in the area of gender-based violence. So if you ask me how, I would say it's legislative changes. They have helped to evolve with societal changes. So we still have a number of challenges, like you mentioned about whether there are still barriers. Yes, because 37%, if the Constitution talks about 30%, you would want it to be more, because the 30% is guaranteed whether women participate in election at all or they don't. So you would think if women now decide to go directly to the constituencies, the numbers should go up. But we are going up slowly because of the barriers that you have just mentioned. It's not very easy for women, maybe this is not very special for Tanzania, to get out there when you meet rude comments and you meet people discussing personal issues which have nothing to do with the leadership or even for the position that you're aspiring to have. So some women find it very difficult to cope in such environment, and so it becomes difficult for them to get out there. But we are trying hard. Like now, you know, we have a female vice president, so she's giving a lot of inspiration to the young girls and young women to participate. And even myself, the first time I was in parliament, I was an appointed member of parliament. I was appointed by the president for the last 5 years. So last year we had elections. I didn't want to be appointed again, so I went to a constituency. But I believe that I'm one of the people probably who should be influencing the society to participate more in politics. And so the barriers, yes, they're there, but they're more related to how the society looks at a woman. And in few instances, the political parties are not very open to give chances to women to lead those parties. And so it becomes difficult for women to make it to to even the constituency level, to have your name nominated by your own party, let alone being voted. So those are the challenges we keep dealing with, but I'll be open to questions should any arise. So maybe I'll end there with those few remarks. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That is very interesting experience. I think we all, women and men, can share, specifically when it comes to legislation and changing culture of the society. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ms. Poonam Mahajan. She's a member of the Parliament of India, and she has a very strong, influential CV, as very well known as one of those Indian women who led the change of the Indian women status, specifically in the 21st century. So having such a good experience and reputation, Mrs. Poonam, a record recently of the Indian Parliament indicates, in 2019, shows that today you have 78 women legislators. And listening to many of our speakers today, where they stress a lot the quota system and how is it really affecting the empowerment of women, do you think that quota system for women in parliament can really help more women to attract and to have more women legislators? And also, I would like to ask you, and the same question: what are you doing to support Indian women to overcome the COVID-19?
Namaste, everyone. It starts from good morning to good evening to all of you from different time zones. All of you have come together. Thanks to United Nations has got this idea together. Thank you, Her Excellency Alia, who's got all of us together on board. I am grateful to our Mr. T.S. Tirumurthy, a peer of India, His Excellency Tirumurthy ji, namaste. And thank you very much, all of you on this panel for inviting me. Let me put it this way. I come from a country which has a vibrant democracy, young democracy, from oldest culture to the youngest democracy, from the oldest world you look at, to the youngest nation, to the youngest population. So yes, the world is looking at India, how we look at India and take it forward. Coming from a country where there are different languages, different cultures all together, I had not learned in English. English was not my priority language which I learned in. So when I was learning a little bit of English, I asked my father one question. I asked him, what is the difference between he and she? My father said he is a man who represents he. Then asked him why she is called she. He said, because there is an S before he, which means superior to he is the she which you have to believe in. And I was a 5-year-old, did not understand that well. But when I come and work here, when I come and work in and see it, I understood what he meant as being a father to a daughter. So everything, the women empowerment we are talking about, it has to start from us, from our culture. Once it's been taught to our culture that women, when they start, when they decide that my son and daughter are equal to me, when they start telling them that I need to teach them equally, need to treat them equally. Once a woman takes care of a house, the society becomes stronger. And we are lucky in this country where we have seen that now. And you always need an example to lead that. And as Honorable Tirumurthy ji already told us about the history of India's politics and women politicians taking it forward. And right now, when India is thriving ahead with this young population, Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi has given us an agenda that India needs to be women-centric, women-led developed nation. Once he understood, till the time we need to clap for everything and to support it, but when we do namaste, we need two hands together. So there is a man and a woman. And when we talk about SDG goal number 5 for gender equality, that all has to come together. And with numbers, yes, I, as a member of parliament, second term, being the first woman who was leading youth wing nationally for my political party, I still look at this as glass half full and be very positive. But when I look at this glass as half empty, what I look at this as number 78, okay, it's not a great number. We need half of the population taking part from judiciary to politics to everything. But quota system, you know, it's so politically used in India. I wouldn't call it as women's quota. But what I talk about is that women's representation needs to be strengthened. I would be happy once the bill comes in the parliament where we are talking about 33% reservation in Indian parliament for women. But before that, if we look at how we are looking at women-led development, we are starting from the foundation. It has to be ground up more than looking at trickling down effect. So every local body election in India has 50% representation from women. In states, there are many states which have taken 33% reservation. So we are empowering from ground up. And as we have seen it, India taking this forward, the example of being the history of the prime ministers and presidents, the chief ministers, defense minister of India in past 6 years, the main important strength of every country is its finances, its economic development. And we have a very strong women finance minister, a full-time finance minister who's taking this country through this pandemic forward. As you have said, you asked a second question about how we are looking through this pandemic at this time. As our Prime Minister always said about women-led development, women-centric development, I would like to just throw in a little bit of numbers. When Prime Minister Modi took oath in 2014, he took this agenda forward and he did speak about this. And it's not only speaking, it's about making an impact, how we take it forward. Point number 1, we, in past 6 years, creating wealth of India, we created 220 million women accounts, bank accounts, which were never touched to small little villages. During lockdown, these accounts, especially women, 220 million women accounts, got 300 billion Indian rupees in their accounts to strengthen them and to make them feel secure. We have actually now, by 26 February 2021, more than 81% of these accounts. Stand Up India scheme where women have got 207 billion rupees. There is so much I can throw only the numbers at, but what I try to represent my country, that we need to empower each other. And I'm very happy there is a little bit of quota for men also on this panel who are talking for women-led development. And I'm happy for that. I know we have a little time, but I congratulate all of you as being the strengthening part of India's youth and women empowerment. We are always there to support each other, and anything we can do as a nation, we are always there. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really very, very interesting. I believe our audience also will have some question to raise it for you. Why he is superior than the other? So moving now to the other speaker, Miss Anika Strandhäll, and sorry for the pronunciation if I'm mistaken. She's a member of the Swedish Parliament, the Committee on the Labour Market, and she's also former Minister of Social Affairs of Sweden. So you have said that gender equality requires courage and perseverance. How do you suggest we move from a plan to action that delivers concrete results on the ground?
Thank you so much, Hind, for that introduction, and thanks to all the speakers. It has been a real privilege to listening to you. Yeah, as you say, it's really gender equality, and achieving gender equality is really about struggling and have perseverance and working hard. You know, this year, Sweden is commemorating the 100th anniversary of suffrage. And our experience is that it takes time to achieve equal representation of women and men in decision making. Sometimes when I meet people and I speak about gender equality and I speak about Sweden, I often get the reaction that you are so different there in the Nordic states. And actually the truth is that it has been a struggle for the last 100 years, and it has been done step by step. Today, Sweden has quite a high proportion of women in elected decision-making bodies. The proportion of women is currently 46% in our national parliament, 48% in our county councils, and 43% in our municipal councils. But there are still challenges pertaining to political representation also in Sweden. We can see that we have quite a major difference between different political parties in Sweden on how you tackle this. And also at the local level in Sweden, we can see that we have differences also between the municipalities. And I think it's also very important to point out that equal representation between men and women in all their diversity cannot be achieved unless women and men also have equal conditions in political life. As long as women politicians, this is the situation still in Sweden, have a higher rate of dropout during and terminate their position during their mandate period to a higher degree than men, it's a difference. And as long as women politicians also experience sexual harassments and violence in politics, we must continue to struggle. And I really would like to be a little more concrete on how we really achieved the success that we today have in Sweden. As I said, it has not happened by itself. It has taken many years and many kinds of actions, both from the political parties, from the government, from the counties and municipalities. All have their responsibility to work really actively to promote gender balance. And in Sweden, I would like to say that a lot of things happened in the 70s. And what we saw was that women's rights organizations in Sweden and also women within the political parties really put a pressure to increase the number of women in Swedish politics during the 70s. They also played a really important key role for the introduction of special voluntary measures to increase the number of women in politics. That was ranging from, general goals to recommendations and party quotas. And especially, I would like to emphasize something that has been really, really important for the development in Sweden. And that was when we got in place the so-called zipper system, in which women and men are placed on alternate seats on the party lists. This was put in place in the mid-1990s, maybe, that we had like 50% women on the party lists. And that was kind of a revolution. I would also like to mention that besides the work with the representation in the politics, we also in the 70s put some political other reforms in place to make it easier for women to access the labor market and to study and to have a shared responsibility when it comes to the responsibility for children and home. And that was, for example, that we put in place the individual taxation. We stopped taxing families in Sweden in 71 and started taxing individuals. In 74, we got the really generous parental leave system in Sweden. That was also very important. And to accompany that, we also really focused on childcare of good quality that was accessible for all families. And this really made a change from, well, in 1970, 50% of Swedish women were on the labor market. 10 years later, we had a participation of women in the labor market that was reaching over 80%. So it was really important with these reforms, and at the same time, the pressure from the women's rights organizations and women within the political parties and the demand for representation. I would also like to mention that since we got the SIP system lists in the parties in Sweden, we have had around the 40 to 60% interval between men and women when it comes to representation, both nationally, but also regionally and locally. The Swedish government itself has also then been gender balanced since 1994. This was a result of the SIP system. And the current government comprises of 54% women and 46% men. And I heard some other examples here. I think it was my colleague from India that also mentioned that it also has to be in some of the central positions in government. Like, for example, we have a female finance minister in Sweden. That's especially, I think, important now when we are also combating COVID and focusing on women. And we also have a female minister for foreign affairs. Since 1995, we also have had the Swedish commissioner to the European Union has been a female. So this is a little of a tradition now. They have done a really good job. But however, we still haven't had a female prime minister in Sweden. So that is our next goal that we will work for. I think it's quite embarrassing because all the other Nordic countries has had female prime ministers, and also a lot of colleagues that we have heard today from around the world that have set that example. And I think it's really important. Well, I think that is some of the points I wanted to make, and not to give up. And also when it comes to changing the negative norms, this really needs to start early, and the work for gender equality also has to involve men and boys. And from an early age, how do they view women and women's participation at all levels in society. So we have a lot of work to continue to do. And I mean, now we are also facing the COVID crisis that is really pushing back some of the gender equality reforms and the steps in the right direction that we have seen in like the last decades. And now more than ever, we need to be focused and work forward together. So thank you so much to Qatar for arranging this seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Anika. That was very interesting, informative speech. And thanks for letting us that it will not happen by itself, and it might take 100 years for some countries to reach equal full participation. But I believe that for Sweden, you might need less than 10 years to see the first female woman prime minister. So congratulations in advance. So our next speaker, and he is a male. Okay. We would. Our next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Howling Exo, the United Nations Assistant Secretary General, Assistant Administrator, and Director of Bureau for Policy and the Program Support and the UNDP. So for the past decades, the UNDP has been actively supporting election for women and all over the world. What do you think, based on your experience, the most important or the biggest challenges being faced to reach full participation of women in the politics and gender equality? And can you give us also any concrete examples how you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Mukhtar. Thank you very much, Ambassador Alia and the co-organizers for inviting UNDP to participate in this important event to promote gender equality. And as time is short, so I will make my comments also short. I think in elections, there are clearly several major obstacles that preventing women from participating, both as candidates and as voters. One is social norms and attitudes that have been mentioned. And our gender social norm index shows very clearly that 47% of men and women interviewed across 75 countries say that they think men make better political leaders than women. So that's what people think. So we needed to really do something about the attitudes and the social norms. The second obstacle is the enabling environment. So then not sufficiently enabling environment for women to participate through legislation, political culture, and the processes. So I think the third one is violence against women in elections, right? And in fact, it is quite widespread. So this can prevent women from running as candidates, right, and winning offices, and also to participate in votes. So I think these are some of the major issues that we see. And but things can be done. What we're emphasizing through our electoral support work, working very closely with our UN partners, is to really look at the entire electoral cycle. During the pre-election period, we strongly agree with some speakers that have said earlier to enact gender quota laws. But there are evidence that with gender quota laws, the political representation of women is much stronger than countries without such legislations. And also I think it's really important that during elections period, we need to make sure that we have an enabling environment to allow women to participate without fear of violence and intimidation. Right? For example, we needed to make sure that polling stations are accessible for women and there's safe conditions for them. And also, it's very important to learn lessons in the post-election period to see what we can learn and what necessary electoral changes we can introduce. For example, in the Arab states, we are working with the Organization of Arab Electoral Management Bodies to launch the initiative called Arab Network for Women in Elections. So this is precisely to work with the regional civil society organizations, and also other community leaders, legislative members, religious leaders, right, to support women's participation in political life. So I think it's very clear we cannot achieve the SDGs and the building back better, goal without genuine gender equality and women's empowerment. So while women's political participation is not where we want it to be, but it is gaining momentum. And I think there's steps that we can take to achieve that goal. So let's work together. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Last but not least, we have our speaker from Japan, Ms. Rui Matsukawa, Parliamentarian Vice Minister of Defense and Parliamentary Vice Minister of the Cabinet Office. And she worked at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for over 2 decades. She was the first director of the Gender Mainstreaming Division and was responsible for realizing a society in which all women shine. Very, very powerful title. Through diplomacy, she also managed the World Assembly of Women. So, Ms. Roy, in 2016, you were elected to represent Osaka in the House of Councillors in Japan. In your point of view, how do you ensure parliaments become gender-sensitive institutions? And what sort do you think of initiatives that empower women and encourage them to be more politically participant, specifically when it comes to leadership positions?
Hi, thank you very much. First of all, let me say thank you to the Qatar government and also the organizer, India, Sweden, and Tanzania, and ESCWA. Also the friendship with my country, Japan, and also Japanese mission in New York. I see the ambassador is kind of there. And thank you for the kind of introduction. I've spent most of my time as a diplomat. And then I changed the job. Now I'm a member of the parliament. Someone knows, the working style, the method are very different from the diplomats and the member of the parliament, politician. And now I'm enjoying, but it was a huge change. So I had a struggle to catch up and also get used to being a member of the parliament, politician, being in the politics. And now that I would like to say, since when I took the office of a gender mainstreaming directorship at the foreign ministry, it was 2014 and 15. So it's like 6-7 years past. And actually, Japan has changed a lot. 4 times more female executive in the companies. And we were talking about M card in 2014, but now that it's gone. Japanese women's labor participation is more than the OECD average, so it's more than the US at least. And then we have I think that one of the best parental leave system. Now that the government is pushing for the parental leave for men, obligatory. We are now passing the law. So all Japanese men are asked by the company to take parental leave right after the baby is born. 1 month is like almost de facto basis, it's mandatory. So we are changing and making lots of, I think, the achievement in many fields. However, I have to admit that if you take the gender gap index, which is our economic forum is every year issuing, Japan ranks 121 out of 153 countries, so which is not great. But because you're expert, you know the reason why. It's because of the politics. You see, the gender gap index is composed of the 4 elements. One is health. The second is education. The third is women's participation in economy. And then the last one is politics. Japan ranks almost the top in education. Japanese women are very much educated. Education, and we are healthy. We are proud of the longest longevity in the world. So it's 87 years old for women. Men is 82, I believe. But anyway, so that's fine. The problem comes to economy is still, we have a room for improvement, but it's much better. Politics. which I belong to. 22.9, I'm sorry, almost 10% of the lower house is just women. We have two parties, two houses system, so the lower house. And the upper houses has a better ratio, which I belong to, is 22.9% are women. So it's more than 20%, so it's not that bad. But because the gender gap index only uses their percentage of the lower house, it's a little bit, I think, degrading. But that being said, still, Japan lags behind in women's participation, plus women's higher position as a politician and women's position. So that's the agenda we have to tackle now in Japan. And fortunately, now that I think Japan is at the crossroads, there are lots of discussion for this is the last thing we have to really tackle, the politics, women in politics. And then I can explain why women are not so there are not many women in the politics. And it's not just about gender bias. See, like, for example, like politics is for men. There are certain notion before. Now that it's changing, but it's not the only reason. It's also because there are, I think, a couple of the reasons why women are so small, underrepresented in the politics. One is the bias, I admit, but it's changing. And the second is the system. I think it's the same for most of the countries. In the past, many countries has more male politicians. So the constituency is, you have the male candidate already, male parliamentarian, right? And in Japan, as shown that we have higher number in the upper house, which employs the plural candidacy system, has more women. I may explain. Let me elaborate a little bit. The only 10%, 9.8% are women in the lower house, because lower house system Japan has is smaller constituency. It's part of the prefecture. And then only one person can be the official candidate from the party. You see, we have I belong to the ruling party, Liberal Democratic Party, but there are a couple of other parties in Japan. But each party can present one candidate because there is only one winner from the constituency. So if you have already existing parliamentarian there, then there is no, metabolic system working to employ the new blood. So it's not only just women, but maybe younger people who want to challenge from that constituency has a difficulty because there is not much change there. So that's one thing. The other thing is women we have 10% of women in the lower house, but they are, generally speaking, it's a very difficult constituency, which means not many men want to take. So because it's difficult to constituency, women cannot sustain the seat. I think maybe it's rare in Japan, lower house election can happen anytime. I belong to the upper house, so I know exactly when my next election comes. But it's not the case for the lower house. Prime Minister can dissolve the parliament anytime if he wants. So that makes it's keeping the seat more difficult. And the third point is the way of working. I think maybe other countries have similar problem too. But being a member of the parliament, you have to go back to your constituency every weekend, right? You have to sacrifice your time for transportation. And then in Japan, meeting with people face to face is really important. So now that I'm really hoping that this COVID-19 thing will do some goods to change the working style of the parliamentarian too. Because before the corona, and then maybe still there too, you have to meet people, go to a tea party or like a drinking party or like just parties to chat with people or show yourself and just shake hands. not necessarily a great talk there, substantial, but you have to be just to show up many places. And this way of, if you call this is political activities, because women are really pragmatic creature, you are comparing with the, okay, you want to spend every weekend to meeting people, you know, in party after party or like a meeting after meeting, or you want to spend time with your kids. So that's how it happens for Japanese women. We are realistic people. So for the, I guess for the Japanese women, not necessarily the job of the parliamentarian, not job itself is important, but the working style, you know, what you have to do daily basis, it's a little bit hard for women, especially who has a little child to take care. So I think these three things, so one is maybe a bit of the psyche, you see, gender set psyche. And then this system. And then this working style, all has to be changed. But I think according to what I learned, we learned from the other countries' success, most effective way is quota. Everybody knows, but it's difficult. But be assured, in the ruling party even, we are more conservative. But the female politicians are now becoming more assertive and assertive to request our position, more women in the politics, and also more higher positions in the decision-making position in the party or in the government, more women. And I think many Japanese people now take it a bit bizarre. Half of the population is not necessarily well represented in the parliament. So we are now seen a big change. But again, it's difficult and we know the solution, but in employing the solution itself is difficult. So give us, yeah, I hope like you know, like who the countries who've been already succeeded by these methods can maybe give us a good message. Okay, this is a way, and then it's not, you don't have to really worry about. So these are the stars now. I really hope that myself can show some good example to possible followers, young Japanese women. And then now the Corona thing is, I think in a way, made alarm the Japanese people a lot. Perfect, whether you have a good governor or not, or whether you have a good mayor or not, whether you have a good politicians in your town or not, does affect your life. The Japanese people realized. Before, people thought anyone can be a politician, nothing, it's okay, government is great. And so, but it's changed. I think now that you will see a very new Japan in very short time, I hope. Fingers crossed. Thank you. Oh, and then I was very happy to hear that Meran Babia, and I think some of maybe you were my mentor. And then your existence helped us to become a politician. That's a part of the reason. Thank you so much. Great network.
Yes, we need network. Thank you very much. That was really very interesting. And I think listening to you and listening to the many other also distinguished speakers, I don't know, but you know, based on so many research papers and based also on my personal experience with many women in the parliamentarian, and also the reality, I think most of you are talking about how two aspects are really playing very vital role in women's empowerment and political participation. Systems through legislation as quotas, culture, including attitudes and women confidence, families, balance issues, and so on. So I believe this is one of really the main issues that can really play both as empowering women and at the same time could be a barrier for more effective empowerment. And going back to since I will open the floor for the discussions and the questions. Since we are talking about the systems and how legislation, including of course the quota, is really considered as one of the you know, catalysts in changing women and empowering them more in the parliaments. I have a question here. Now, where did I miss? Yeah, I have a question here. It's regarding, for Dr. Askins, regarding the quotas. system in the political parties in Tanzania. How is it working? Are you with us, Doctor? Can you hear me, Dr. Axon?
Sorry, okay. So I saw the question by the Honorable Commissioner regarding the quota at the political parties level. Okay, we don't have generally quotas which require political parties to give a certain number of political aspirants to women. But in the ruling party, where I come from, the majority party, we have quotas regarding the 30%, in the sense that there are groups that have their seats are reserved. Like you have 3 seats for people with disabilities. You have 10 seats for youth. All these will be women, but they have a specific number of representation. And then we have the regions from Tanzania mainland. As you know, it's a united republic. You have Tanzania mainland, and then you have the islands of Zanzibar. So you also have that to take that into account. So when you say 10 youth, 4 come from Zanzibar, 6 come from the mainland. So it's that kind of quotas. Then you have people representing the workers in the country, and they also have reserved 2 seats for them. And then you also have universities, they're equally represented. So you have 2 seats again. And then you also have parents association. That has 2, so 1 from Zanzibar and 1 from the mainland. Now, so just simply, the political parties, there is no law that requires them to have a quota system to accommodate women or any other group for that matter. But even the 30% in some political parties, it is not very clear how they get the percentage that they're allowed to bring to the parliament, how they get them. But for the majority party, the rules are very clear where it sets out. So if it's a woman who wants to come under youth, meaning they are below 35, then they can go to the youth wing and then vie from there, and then it comes to the party. The same, if a person wants to go through persons with disabilities, they have to go through the organized groups and structures, and then they get elected there, and then they come back on the list of the party. That's how it works. But political parties are not required by any law to have any quotas in terms of representation.
We have also 2 open questions. I mean, anyone can answer. The first question being a very good role models, specifically as a, women in the political leadership positions. How can you manage a family balance? This is one of the main issues, and I'll come back later to the question. So anyone is interested in answering this question? Yes, please, Patricia.
Thank you. And all of the MPs have spoken about trying to manage these issues. It really is important. What we're hearing is women's voices. There are men who also want to do these things, and I'm really pleased to see that Japan has made this move to parental leave policies. But I encourage all of you to look at the IPU handbook on how to do a gender analysis of the parliament. And I'm hoping that the UN might do a similar thing. What are the structures in place? When are the meeting times? How does it work? If we're always running into the evenings, does that really make for any family life for anybody? Or are there things that have just become the way we always do it and no one can really challenge? But if you actually look at it and say, does this have an impact on families? Do we need to do that? Could we do it another way? Then we will find that there are better ways to do things, and we make life better for men and women. And then and also this issue, the second one I want to address is the sexism, violence, and harassment that is experienced to a stunning degree by women all over the world in parliaments. And it has to stop. There has to be zero tolerance. When we looked at the issue, we saw particularly from within their own parties, that women experience too much of this harassment and violence. And by shining a light on it, we were able to identify some tools, and we need to do more of that work to shine a light on it, to tell people what's happening, where women are actually called up and said, you'll vote this way, I know where your kids go to school, or they're physically harmed or subjected to all kinds of things. It shouldn't happen. And we need to make sure that those bullies don't keep getting away with it, and that the law comes down on them. So doing the analysis, especially on a gender neutral basis, let's see what it is. It allows us to fix the problem.
Thank you, Patricia, but this one also will lead me to asking a question, a general question, since we have so many legislation regarding gender family balance, including different aspects of, the examples of the bullying you said. How do you react regarding the culture? We've seen how the culture worked very well in Japan and in Tanzania and some parts of the world. So how do we have to react? We have the legislation in a place, but we need to be also to change the culture itself. Anyone would like to answer this question?
Yeah, can I?
Yeah.
I don't know whether I'm answering the question, but you see, I think it's like an egg and chicken argument. If the women become more than the 30% of the group, then this will change the whole culture. I think what is necessary is actually, rather than trying to change the culture, that is important, and it pretty much depends on the leader. When Prime Minister Abe took the office, and then his main agenda became the make society, let's women shine in Japan or in the world, and then womenomics became the main agenda in Japan. It's really changed the whole thing. Diversity is a source of the innovation, and the things changed. So to change the culture, leadership is really important. Often it's maybe male, but anyway, the leadership of the company's president, or maybe the prime minister of the country, or these are important. But I think, again, to change something, you cannot just expect some great leader comes up. So I think to increase the number of the women in the politics in an important position by some means, actually change the culture. I think that's what is the most effective thing. But it's difficult.
If I can add, I have been managers, in different offices, and in many offices there are, sometimes more women than men, and as a manager, you visibly, you just notice that there are more women, obviously getting married, having children, and neither, family leaves. And then as a manager, you're forced to deal with that. Okay, what do you do, right? So you needed to have a backup system for that. And in some other offices, I didn't have to deal with that. So that really makes me realize that you actually needed to pay attention to this. You needed to purposely support women, who are pursuing both the family and the professional career. So I think for male, managers, hitting me sometimes, very, profoundly. So as men, we didn't have to deal with these kind of issues. And I think the gender-based violence is another issue, and that has come out now more and more with the Me Too movement. And these are real issues. These are real issues. And so I think the cultural change is deeply, ingrained in our society. I'm from China. In China, we have this debate about, 996, because there are many, business people promoting working hours from 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock in 6 days, a day, and so forth. So there's a lot of debate, as to whether this kind of working culture lead us to, and the impact on women and so. So I think it is really in our everyday life we have to think about it. Oh.
Dr. Hind, you are muted.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That was really very informative answer. I think I've seen two questions. One question is regarding the quota system and how, answer this question. The one question that and it's mentioning basically Qatar and Mexico, and how is the COVID-19 is affecting the population in general, and how is might affecting the participation of women in the coming election. So I don't know, maybe Reem al-Mansouri, you would like to answer this question?
I think COVID will really affect us positively. So women during COVID start to have their own time to think positively how we should be more assertive and really our positions. So I couldn't really see any negativity on women. I received a lot of questions everywhere, how we would like to participate, how the system will work. I've seen very large number of females who are more than ready, and they are preparing for this stage.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone would like to add anything more? Any comments? I don't see any more questions. Otherwise,
I've got a question.
Sorry, yes?
I can't see. I would like to hear from the panelists the impact in terms of persons with disabilities and more so women with disabilities. Thank you.
Did you get the questions? Any of the panelists interested in answering? Impact of women? Sorry, what's the question?
In terms of persons with disabilities and women with disabilities.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question very properly. Anyone?
The question is about persons with disabilities, the impact.
The impact, yeah, okay. Anyone would like to answer this question?
Yeah, I think.
Yes, please, Dr. Tolia.
I just posted a Secretary General's briefing on COVID-19's impact on women, which talks about various aspects of how COVID.
Yeah, sexual violence. Yeah, I can see it.
Many aspects of that, and I think we know that women are hit, very hard, in particular because many of women are working in informal sectors, and they work in healthcare industry that have been hard hit. And in some countries, we know that informal sector accounted for more than 80% of the economy in some developing countries. So that means they don't have some social security that they have, social protection they have. So I think we're working with many governments to make sure that we starting from the digital identity, for these informal sector workers, so that they can be included in formal social protection systems. And gender-based violence has also been highlighted as one of the consequences because of limitations on mobility. They're confined sometimes with those who perpetrate these crimes. So I think so the impact on women is really significant, and I think there are many organizations that are focused on this issue, including UN.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Chali, also you wanted to say something, please?
Yes, please. Regarding this question, in Tanzania, if I would start with the parliament, like I said, we have got members of parliament with disabilities, and one of them has been appointed as deputy minister in the prime minister's office to deal with people with disabilities, because then she understands better the challenges that they go through. And so we have had policies change because of the representation that we have in parliament. And when elections are done, there is no really discrimination that maybe a person with disability wouldn't be given a chance. But like I said, we don't have a quota except for 30% that belongs to women. But irrespective of that, we also have a law that was enacted in 2010, which talks about the rights of persons with disabilities act. Now, this law gives a quota in employment situation, in work environment. So the employers are supposed to be alert at all the time and take into account that the law talks about 3% of the employees have to be disabled people. It's only when you can't find them, then that's something else. But if we're a person with a disability who has studied whatever it is that is being done by a particular company, then they get their 3%. So we have a law in place. And of course, one may ask about the implementation, whether it's being implemented. I would say to a large extent, yes. But the problem is we go back again to the normal challenges that we have with people with disabilities. Sometimes they don't have equal access to education. So if they're not educated enough to fit the qualifications of a particular job, that might be a challenge. But generally, we have a law in place that protects them. And we currently have a deputy minister who is a lady with a disability. But we also have several officials with disabilities, and they are helping to shape the country policies and laws in place to ensure that they change the laws in place and at times practices. Because when you have people with disability in higher positions, it helps the people around, or even the parents who are battling with people with disabilities in their families. They are able to take them to school because they know they can become somebody else, because they see these leaders holding high positions. And we have also ambassadors who are disabled. So I think as a society, we have made great steps. Thanks.
Thank you. I think time is running, but I believe most of our audience who are attending with us this session are really excited to know more about women empowerment. And let me just give the last question to Poonam from India. There's 2 questions for you regarding how to empower women from minorities as Muslim women, and how to enable older generation to support the new generation to become more politically participating in the leadership positions.
Thank you. The first question about minority women. I look at women in a very different way. And when we also go to ask for votes for women, women they are not distributed into religion and caste. I always feel a woman's religion is being a woman. For her, everything is about herself, her family, and how she takes it forward. I think we are so well designed as women. We do follow our religion, we follow our system, but as I always say, a woman's religion is her womanhood, she takes it forward. In India, what we are looking at is the complete development, what we're looking forward to. There should not be gender parity, and especially in gender, especially women, we don't want to have parity. And Muslim women, Christian women, Parsi women, we have so many other minorities. We do give representation, and even to empower them. We recently struck down a law called triple talaq, where a man can just divorce a woman just over a phone saying talaq, talaq, talaq. And so many stronger Muslim nations also do not support that. But India was the nation which was actually not even discussing this. And right now, I did speak on that also, and I did mention the he and she, and how equality, especially for women, is very important for their empowerment. So striking down laws where women are getting more empowered, that's very important. Minority or majority, a woman's suffering is not actually divided into that. That's number one. I think your second question was
about how the older generation is supposed to enable the new generation.
So I think that that friction is in every generation. In politics, in corporate world, I'm being a young politician. It's always been our seniors telling, Poonam, you have enough time to take things forward. And you're so much in a hurry to do so much. I think everybody will agree with me. When you're young and a woman, it becomes quite difficult to forward it. But I learned, thankfully, we have got good opportunity as youth, and the Honorable Prime Minister is looking forward the youth-centric India, women-centric India. As honorable guest from Japan, I had gone there as the head of parliamentary panel to Japan. And one amazing thing, because we have to all learn from each other. In Diet, they have this system where the youngest parliamentarian, who's the first timer, sits in the front rows, and the older generation sit behind. For us, we are always the backbenchers, as because we are the youngest, and getting the chance is always, going forward and asking for it, how students go to their main professors. So that was quite interesting, and I did speak about it. So we need to get that opportunity. And yes, India has that capacity. We are thriving to it. And as a woman, I believe, as a young woman, every women are young at 80 also. So let me put it this way. But women need to believe that they are empowered with so much of positivity, emotional balance, positivity. I think we are the only ones genetically designed to handle family. As I was looking out, my children are jumping on the trampoline. I hope they don't fall out. And still I'm attending the meeting as though a lot of questions were handling that way. And at the end, when we have so much of strength for positivity and to handle everything together, I think we just have to take each other's great examples to come together and take this forward. And I'm again grateful to the state of Qatar to take this dialogue forward. And we are here as India, as the nation, to support this, to take this forward.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Personally, I really enjoyed listening to your experiences, listening to such backgrounds from different perspectives, really lighten my future way if I'm going to be elected or nominating myself for the Shura Council. But I'm very sure that listening to such role models was really as a kind of enhancing the coming generation how to lead the same path. We need a change, but we need also determination. We need a strong mentality, not strong muscles. So struggling for the legislation itself is not enough to have, all those legislation in place, but more importantly, we need to be very sure that those legislation are really implemented and implemented very equally in all different aspects, politics, economic, and social. And definitely we need to lead the change socially, culturally, to ensure the full participation of women. And to conclude, without having the he, without being superior to the he, but we need the support of he, of course, so that we get, moving forward hand in hand, because this is not about women, it's all about family, and family is all about community and society. Thanks for Sheikha Alia for managing and organizing this event, and thank you very much. And hopefully you enjoy it. And if you allow me, I will ask Sheikh Alia now to conclude and close the session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hand. Thank you for your able and excellent moderation of the panel. I know that we all have to rush to the opening of CSW, but let me just quickly thank again my fellow colleagues and co-hosts, Ambassador of India, Ambassador of Japan, Ambassador of Sweden and Tanzania, and of course our partners, ESCOA, IPU and UNDP, but especially to thank our distinguished, very distinguished panel of women parliamentarians. Please continue to lead the change. You are great role models, and please continue the conversation. I want us all to commit to continue the conversation on enhancing women political participation. From our part, we will do so. Thank you again, and have successful CSW meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. شكرا دكتورة هند.
شكرا يا علي، يعطيك العافية، يعطيكم العافية جميعا.
الله يسلمك. شكرا أخت ريم.
شكرا Ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you so much Patty. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا للجميع. شكرا شيخ علي.
ما قصرت.
شكرا عليا. متشكرين.
Thank you Tiro. Thank you so much.
شكرا Arya.
Thank you Kennedy. Thank you so much brother.